G'day Flosstube, Anna aka Moranalis, back with a stitching update. It is, I have no idea what the date is. It's Saturday in early June, probably the first Saturday. I have no idea what happened to May, didn't get to Mania. I had kind of debated about it earlier in the year, but not on the priority list this year. Maybe next year we'll get back to the whole vlog style videos because, you know, that was actually kind of fun. But for this year, giving it a miss, I have done not all that many projects this month. But I've got a fair bit of progress on those that I worked on. So it all comes out in the wash, right? But I think it'll be a relatively short video just because there's not that many projects to show you. Before I ramble anymore, welcome to anybody who's new. Welcome to everybody who's returning. This is typically a very disorganized channel about cross stitch. I show you what I've been working on, or what I've gotten as far as new charts or plans or whatever randomness comes into my brain when I'm sitting in front of the camera. And that's about the extent of the organization that happens. So as for today, I have 3 projects to show you. One is actually a new start and a little bit of haul. So without further ado, I will have to insert a picture of what this one's going to look like all up. Can't remember if I told you guys in the past. Now that I've started working with Pattern Keeper on these, I actually went and put into Pattern Keeper all the maths of how many stitches I've done, estimated start date where I knew it, and let it do the maths based on, to work out an estimated finish date based on how many stitches per day I'd done in the past. This little panel is part of a set of 3, which hopefully by now you've seen it. And this is the only panel I've started. This is Aura of Autumn by Leonid Afrimov, charted by Artecy, I think. This is the only one I've started. And when you last saw it, I was kind of coming through, must have been on that diagonal, the blue over there. So I've done a fair bit. When I was over here, the math said I would finish all 3 panels about early 2036. Now that I've gotten almost over the whole row, it's roughly a page high, it's now saying I'll get done in 2033. So by actually working on this for a month, I've knocked 3 years off the estimated completion time. Which just tells you, if you work on something, you actually might finish it eventually. But I love the way the colors are on this. You kind of lose it a bit when it's up close and you're working on it, but it really does present really vibrant, just like his paintings did. Anyway, so I'm thinking, last you saw it, was working roughly a page high and a diagonal through there. I am no longer paying any attention to pages. It's basically one frame of the Q-snap goes to just the other side of the pole, and then one other thing on the Q-snap to fill most of the remainder. I have basically now, because it's so hard to get right along that edge with the Q-snap, that I've just basically given up. I've taken it out of the Q-snap. I will stitch this last little bit until it's roughly as high as that page mark in hand. And then next time I pull it out to, you know, start the next row up, I will probably put it back in the Q-snap and do, you know, most of what's visible in the Q-snap at that point. But I'm just not stuffing around trying to reach it on the edges. I'm gonna lose a needle. As you can tell, I've totally given up parking on this. I don't have any spare threads hanging around anymore. I do occasionally, when I get up to the top of the Q-snap or whatever, I might park a few until I take it out of the Q-snap just simply because I can't follow the trail of stitches any further. But as soon as I took them out of the Q-snap, I sewed them in because I don't want those things hanging around annoying me. So we've given up parking entirely, or more or less entirely, on this, and just, now that we have Pattern Keeper, just going through and filling in as much as possible with every thread and cutting it off when there's no more to be done. And that's just it. So I don't reckon that's too bad progress. I picked this up just before our anniversary, like in the week before our anniversary, which was April 29. So say I maybe picked it up about the 23rd. And I've worked on it since. So a month and a bit of work, pretty religiously most evenings, to get that much progress. You know, during the work week, I might only get 100, 150 stitches in, you know, and then I'll hit a weekend day where I've got several hours to stitch, and I've been known to get the very odd day where I even get 1,000 stitches. Not usually that high. I think at this point, Saturday's mostly gone, and I'm sitting at about the 530 mark. My plan is I want to finish that, even out that page, so that I can call that row more or less complete. And at that point, I'll probably put it away for a while and focus on the map. Because I'm currently slightly ahead of my 20-year estimated completion date on that one, and I want to keep it that way. The other one that has seen a fair bit of progress, in fact, I have no idea where this was last time you saw it, so I'll just have to insert a picture for you, because I don't know, is Bella Filipina's Maiden, Mermaid, and as per usual, I'm not even going to try and say her actual name. This is the Maiden, or Macca's Mermaid, at least in this house. And for anybody who hasn't heard it 6 times, I forgot to tell you, the Aura of Autumn was done on, I think that's 32 count. It's an even weave because it's a full coverage. I tend to do the full coverages on even weave. And before I forget, this one is done on a 28 count cashel. I've hand dyed myself. And then back to where I was before my brain got involved. This is for one of my nieces who is of Korean heritage. So I am changing the skin tone to be, it's the same skin palette that I used when I did Pearl of the Orient, which was for another one of my nieces of Korean descent. So I wanted them to match. And you can see, I know, like I've done a lot of work. I basically finished all of that tail, all of that fin on that side. I think there's a little bit of fin on this side left to do. And I don't think last you saw her, she might have had like the base of her torso started, but I don't think much of her skin was there or her hair. So there's been a massive amount of progress on her. To the point where I knew I'd ordered the bulk of the beads, like I'd done the work to convert the beads for her, but I hadn't actually finished ordering them. And I had to get organized the other day and go or order the last of the beads, because I reckon I'll be ready actually to start beading before too long. And I didn't want to get there and then have to wait 2 weeks for beads to show up. So fingers crossed, we have beads arriving on Monday. Although that little exercise, I don't know, is COVID supplies stuffing with the bead supplies as well? Because when I went to buy the beads for this, I had one set of delicas that must not have been available when I first placed an order, and then random the flower shapes and the teardrop shapes and the bugle beads. And I'd done the work to know that, you know, I knew the code I wanted for the bugle beads, and I knew there were acres of appropriate teardrops and flowers and whatever else I needed on the one website that I normally use. And then when I went to actually go place the order, there was like nothing there. So I don't know whether it's a COVID related thing or quite what, but had a lot harder time actually finding the beads to order this time. But anyway, so that is a huge amount of progress, I'm pretty sure, on her. She has mostly been my floating around in town stitching. As per usual, I take her every day to work, and she sits on my desk when I'm supposed to be having lunch. And I work through lunch, and I look at it, and I think I should take a break and stitch on her, and I never do. And that's a whole nother issue of its own. But she does get a fair bit of stitching time. Occasionally in the evenings, if I have to stay in town for pick up kids or whatnot, we've gotten into kind of a routine where I will sometimes meet my husband after work, and he's done a bit later than I am. So assuming I haven't done the really dumb thing and stayed at the office to do an extra 2 hours worth of work, then I'll go stitch under a tree sometimes and wait for him to join me, which is a much better way to spend my evening, and I should do that much more often. Probably need my hand slapped. So that was Bella Filipina, the Maiden, and the last one I know I worked on is a new start. I think I mentioned somewhere along the line that after this last Christmas, I bought just a cheap Christmas tree. It's not particularly big. I think it was whopping $10, probably on sale. The plan is to spray paint it black and basically make a Nightmare Before Christmas tree for Halloween. So as part of that little exercise, I wanted to have little ornaments that I could hang on the tree. Well, I found some really cute patterns from Satsuma Street. I will have to put in a photo because I think the only pictures I have are the actual chart. So I bought the 4 that I'll put on screen. There are actually at least 2 more sets in a similar vein, which I will probably end up buying and stitching some of them as well. But I figured 4 was enough to get started. And I have started and almost finished the little owl. Now, what I have not stitched, I basically am not going to stitch in the immediate future. My plan is, a lot of this was charted for things like beads and sequins. And what I'm going to do instead is get treasure braid to provide the sparkle. And I think I'm going to get glow-in-the-dark treasure braid, because this tree will actually sit outside at night. So I figured having that moon and some of the little dots through his hat in maybe his eyes as the glow-in-the-dark would actually be pretty cool on Halloween night. Now, the pattern for these actually calls for them to be done on that same perforated paper that Mill Hills are done on. But again, as I've just said, this is going to hang on a Christmas tree outside. It does not rain often here, particularly that time of the year, but we have made mad dashes to get Halloween stuff out of the rain. So don't want anything that will be super sensitive to the environment, and if the paper gets wet, it's going to melt. So this is done on the perforated canvas stuff instead, which first time I've actually stitched on it, I think. Pretty easy to stitch on, 0 problems with it. The most annoying thing is you can't thread your needle through it the same way you can fabric, and that is highly annoying. Actually, what I probably should do is find a needle minder so that at least I can magnet it to it. That would be smart. But I'm generally not that smart. So we have one little owl. I will do basically as many of them as I can fit on that sheet before I cut any of them apart and actually go to fully finishing them. So I'm not particularly stressed about picking the metallics I'm going to use right this moment. I will probably do, 2 or 3 other the base cross-stitch stuff before I even really think about the metallic side of it. I do know the glow-in-the-dark metallic that I kind of have in my head to go for the moon. I don't even have any. I didn't realize Rainbow Gallery made a glow-in-the-dark treasure braid, and we all know my view on Kreinik, not going there, not even for glow-in-the-dark or Halloween. But Rainbow Gallery do have a glow-in-the-dark treasure braid I discovered, so we will give that a go. I have it on... One of the virtual stitchers told me it was no worse than working with the other treasure braids, so I'm excited to try that out and have a glow-in-the-dark option for these things, because, yeah, who doesn't like glow-in-the-dark fun on Halloween night, hey? It just seems appropriate. So that will actually have to be a order probably from 123 Stitch. So I'm currently accumulating a wish list of other things to get at 123 Stitch. But the shipping for 123 Stitch has opened not that long ago. So I have a few treasures that have arrived already, because I put an order in the very first week or so that they resumed shipping, because I'm so desperate to not have any new treats. And I ended up buying the Stoney Creek Halloween Afghan. Now, I've looked at this pattern for quite some time, because we all know I'm a sucker for Halloween. But I have one issue. I live in the tropics. And who needs a freaking Afghan? Because A, it's the tropics, and B, Halloween is spring. Late enough in the spring, it's starting to edge towards summer and get warm. The last thing you want to do is be sitting under an Afghan. So I've often looked at it and I thought, oh, I really want to do that, but why do an Afghan? No, it's never actually going to get used. I could, maybe pin it up to a wall or something on Halloween night, or in the house in the lead up to Halloween or something. It never seemed to work real well in my head. But what I've decided, the original pattern to do, in a full Afghan size, it's like done over 11 count material. So that makes this thing absolutely massive. However, if I do it at something like a 25 count over 1, that brings the size down substantially to a more sort of wall hanging size, manageable size. I'm thinking I will still, put stitching along the bottom to secure that edge, and then leave fribbles of even weave or linen or whatever I use to make the fringe, probably both at the top and the bottom, so it kind of looks like an Afghan, but it's going to be nowhere near as big as an Afghan, and therefore just a bit more manageable in the home environment. So I'm pretty excited to have a go at that. And the bonus is doing this over 25 count over 1 rather than 11 count. It'll use a whole lot less floss. Some of these, this pattern, if you do it on an Afghan, calls for 38 skeins of 310, just the black. So, you do the math on how much floss that makes to do the entire pattern. It's ridiculous. This actually calls for DMC Light Effects glow in the dark. Even worse than Kreinik, not going there. So I will buy enough of the glow in the dark treasure braid to do this with it as well. With that, this is one of the specialty threads that goes in there. I'm assuming it may be part of the tree, or maybe I think part of the path. We decided there's a path into the graveyard. That maybe makes more sense. I think that must be done with that. There is one other specialty overdyed that it calls for. It's a Weeks Dye Works. It calls for hazelnut. and chatting with one of the girls that has a lot of weeks, she reckons hazelnut is a very solid colored thread. So I'm not going to bother to buy 3 skeins of hazelnut. I'm just going to use, in fact, we worked it out. I think it's like $4.35 or something. One of the relevant DMC substitutes that's close to hazelnut. That's the intention. Now I know when I placed that order there would have been more stuff with it. No idea what it was. I presume I put it away with other projects because it's not out here sitting to show you. I don't know, guys. But I can tell you there was more than that. While we were on holidays, it was also my birthday. So my husband started asking, you know, what do you want for your birthday? And because I just ordered that other stuff from 123 Stitch, I was being a bit cheeky. And I'm like, well, I have a wish list on 123 Stitch. And he's, oh, do I have to? But my daughter graciously agreed to go technology for my husband so he could place an order for me on 123 Stitch. And they picked off my wish list the Valdani threads to go with the Winter Quaker. So I don't know that I will start this in the next 5 minutes. I've got a few projects on my plate, but I've never actually stitched with the Valdani threads, so I'm looking forward to giving these a try. I had kind of originally thought that I would just do them with the DMC, but you can see there's actually some really nice variegation in there for a lot of them, so I don't know. It'll be interesting to give them a go and see what I think of them. They, when you see them on the website, this package looks massive, and then when you actually get it, it's unbelievably tiny. But presumably it's enough to finish the Winter Quaker, which I'll put a picture in it because I don't want to dig out my pattern. I'm kind of lazy like that, guys. Yeah, presumably it's enough to finish if I pay attention and make sure I pick the right count of material to go with it. But we will have to start that another day, not today. I think that's probably about it for me. I don't know when I'm going to be back. If I'm not back in a month, don't anybody panic. I just know at that month mark I'm going to have a lot on my plate, so it's probably going to be a few weeks delayed. It may even push out to 2 months. But it is what it is. Everything's grand. I will be back. All right? Until then, see you next time, guys.